throughout today's lectures and today's workshops and the buzz around the hall and around the exhibition area is this: that first-class procurement has never been as important in the delivery of public services as it is today. For the public sector customer, that means securing best value for money in the delivery of services in times of swinging cuts. And for the private sector supplier, trying to keep their business afloat in turbulent economic times. The last few weeks have seen some very bleak messages about future trends in public spending in Scotland and across the UK. But the public sector in Scotland will continue, even after the cuts, to be spending billions of pounds on goods and services every year, and it's important not to forget that, because spent wisely, that has got huge potential as an economic lever to support economic recovery and contribute to the national purpose of sustainable economic growth. And that concept is at the heart of the procurement reform programme in Scotland. Amidst the doom and the gloom, we shouldn't lose sight of just how far we have come in recent years in getting the public sector to work together on procurement reform. And that collective ownership of the reform programme gives me real hope for the future. Take the Public Contracts Scotland portal, almost 2 years old this month. Over 230 bodies, public bodies, using the Public Contracts Scotland portal on a regular basis to advertise contracting opportunities. More than 11,000 contracts advertised in just 2 years. Over 47,000 registered suppliers. And as a birthday present for PCS, the new iPhone app to allow you to keep track of your favourite contracts whilst you're on the move. Or take the National Electricity Contract, covering 98% of public sector bodies, 24,000 separate buildings. Real examples of the public sector, public services, pulling together in the interests of delivering services sensibly and efficiently. The independent budget review earlier this year, led by Crawford Beveridge, recognised and welcomed the progress made so far in reforming procurement. It acknowledged, however, that there's still much to do if procurement is to make the contribution needed over the coming years, and that's an assessment I would certainly agree with. Last week's comprehensive spending review announcement underlines the pressing need to accelerate still further the pace of change. And I'm delighted that we're joined today by John Collington, the Head of Procurement in the Cabinet Office's Efficiency and Reform Group. And I think you'll agree, John, that Scotland and the rest of the UK may be at different points on the procurement reform journey, but there are significant opportunities to work together and to learn from one another, as we both strive to raise public sector purchasing capability and to exploit the opportunity, as you have said, for procurement to shine. The drive for savings, as Ms. Sturgeon said very, very clearly, cannot be at the expense of false economies. Now, more than ever, we need to make sure that we are spending public money wisely and effectively. And that means that procurement can no longer be seen simply as a back office function or some kind of technical black box. Increasingly, some might say belatedly, procurement is being recognised as a key strategic enabler of policy development as well as of service delivery. And as the Deputy First Minister was clear this morning, procurement can no longer be just about buying things. It must be a standard part of the approach we take to achieving the outcomes we aspire to, such as reducing carbon emissions. Good procurement can achieve that. Our award-winning national electricity contracts allow for over 99% of public sector electricity needs to be met by renewable sources. Or how about promoting local employment opportunities? Good procurement can achieve that. Glasgow Housing Association, Raploch Urban Regeneration Company, Falkirk Inverclyde Councils, amongst others, have all successfully included employment and training benefits in their recent contracts. Or local economic development. Well, good procurement can achieve that. 15 small or medium-sized enterprises were named as primary suppliers on the recently launched business management consultancy and temporary staff frameworks, and a further 33 SMEs were involved as consortium members or subcontractors. And yes, of course, good procurement can also save you money, whether it's the £24 million from our e-auctions IT hardware or the 46% reduction in day rates from the business management consultancy framework. Overall, as the recent efficiency outturn report demonstrated, the procurement reform programme in Scotland has achieved over £800 million savings to the public purse. So the potential is huge, and the challenge is to turn that potential into a reality. Earlier this year, we announced the second phase of the procurement reform programme in Scotland, transforming procurement, accelerating delivery, not a change of direction from the original McClelland reforms, but consolidating what had been achieved and intensifying our efforts to deliver the benefits of advanced procurement. And as Ms. Sturgeon mentioned at the end of her speech this morning, I want to touch on three particular things that need to happen. Firstly, there needs to be sufficient procurement capability in buying organisations. And that's something that I know our first speaker this morning, David Noble, would certainly agree with. I've already talked about the increased profile of procurement. Over the last year, under the collective ownership of the Procurement Reform Board, capability assessments have allowed all public bodies to review their purchasing capacity and develop improvement plans. And at an individual level, we're continuing to roll out the procurement competency framework to help identify the development needs of professional procurement staff. And that framework is now being promoted internationally as best practice. And of course, we're continuing to develop and deliver the suite of procurement tools and processes that underpin the whole reform agenda. The shared service e-commerce tools of the Information Hub, eProcurement Scotland, the best practice indicators, the public contracts portal, the standardised policies, guidance and processes that save time and effort for both purchasers and suppliers. From the Sustainable Procurement Action Plan, providing methodology and guidance to look at economic, social and environmental aspects of sustainability, from the Sustainability Action Plan to the latest toolkit to hit the streets, the procurement journey that was being launched today. That procurement journey is designed to make the process clearer and increasingly standardised. But its success really does depend on you using it. And so please do call by the Scottish Government stand to find out more about how it can help you. These initiatives are not driven by government alone. And again, as I've mentioned, the collective ownership of procurement reform across the public sector is critical to its success. So if the first priority is improving capability, the second is to ensure that in our decisions we balance cost against considerations of quality and sustainability. And that value for money triangle is at the heart of the procurement reform strategy. We cannot allow ourselves to fall into the trap of simply fixing on initial costs and ignoring whole life costs and quality. To do that will simply store up trouble for the future and will reinforce a long-held prejudice against the public sector that it understands price but not value. That's why, for example, the Scottish Government last month published new guidelines on the procurement of care and support services. It means that those buying care and support can ensure that the people who receive the service and their carers have the chance to be involved in the process. It means that we can take a longer-term view of future needs, which should ultimately deliver better quality social care. The third thing that needs to happen is that we all, buyers and suppliers, public, private and third sectors, need to work more closely together and adapt to the changing circumstances. Ms. Sturgeon spoke earlier about the implications of the comprehensive spending review for public spending in Scotland. This will be tough. You should expect public sector purchasers to become much tougher and much more commercially minded. And those suppliers who succeed over the coming years will be those that can innovate and offer the public sector new and better ways of delivering on the goals. Put simply, suppliers will need to cut costs or face the risk of losing public sector business. And that is the tough message that anyone wanting to sell to the public sector over the coming years really needs to understand and to act upon. Now, I know that there are concerns about what that means and what collaborative contracting means for business and for small and medium enterprises in particular, but let's not lose sight of the facts. In Scotland, around 50% of total public sector spend goes directly to SMEs, and over 60% of that goes to Scottish-based SMEs. And it goes without saying that Scottish small businesses account for an even greater proportion of subcontracted spend. Some 84% of the 47,000 registered suppliers on the Public Contract Scotland portal are small businesses, and in a recent survey, over 90% of them said that they believed that the portal has made it easier for them to bid for public sector business. We've taken initiatives to ensure that suppliers are paid promptly, and equally importantly, that subcontractors have the right to be paid promptly right down the supply chain. There's always more that can be done, of course, and ensuring ease of access to public sector contracting opportunities, particularly for SMEs, is a key priority. And that's why, as Ms. Sturgeon mentioned this morning, we've been working in partnership with the Scottish Chambers of Commerce, with the Federation of Small Business, to let business people across Scotland input directly to the procurement reform programme. Through the Supplier Engagement Working Group, we are giving business and the third sectors the opportunity to highlight the things that will make the most difference to them. And that's not just tokenism, that's not just government saying we listen and then ignoring it. The standard pre-qualification questionnaire that Ms. Sturgeon described this morning is just one example of how government, public, private sector, third sector can work together to develop and deliver practical, workable solutions that make a real difference. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that we're facing tough times and that difficult decisions lie ahead. And with that in mind, my message to those of you from the public sector is this: do not underestimate the contribution that improved procurement can make, not only to your bottom line, but to the achievement of your wider goals. Back office procurement is poor procurement. Successful procurement leads by example. And to the suppliers amongst you, recognize that things are changing and changing fast. The public sector needs you to deliver more bang for the taxpayer's buck. But you still have far greater, easier and more transparent access to public contracts in Scotland than in almost any country in the world. Public sector spend offers enormous potential for business. If you can innovate, develop and anticipate your clients' changing needs, then you will be well placed to succeed. And through the Procurement Reform Programme, my commitment to you is that we shall do all we can to ensure that, big or small, you have easy, fair and straightforward access to contracting opportunities. The next few years are going to be all about spending our money wisely and spending our money efficiently in a way that is good for the taxpayer, good for public service delivery, good for the economy and ultimately good for Scotland. Thank you very much.